Hello everybody, hope you're all doing quite well. Today I'm going to be talking about No Man's Sky, give my impressions of the game based off my gaming experience with it. Now, I've played a good chunk of the game and I'm almost nearing the center of the universe, so I felt that was a good time to be able to establish a connection with it, having a good amount of information based off of the game to be able to deliver at least a fair and a not so biased opinion based on this video game. Now, when this game got announced a couple years back, or at least got shown more deeply a couple years back, I was a little bit excited for it, but it wasn't anything to me that was exciting beyond, seeing a new piece of tech added to a procedurally generated universe or sub-universes that looked pretty innovative, at least for the style of, a roguelike style game, or a procedurally generated based thing. Now, this game has been bounced back so many times that obviously we've seen our fair share of customers or fans getting really upbeat about it, really upset about it, and quite frankly just upset. I personally was not upset. I didn't really care as much, so it was sort of like, okay, the game will come out whenever. I prefer that anyway because, let's face it, a game hopefully comes out with a bunch of delays, and I'm not including Duke Nukem Forever, might I add, and will usually come out with some polish, or in this case, stable as possible. Now, the hype train for this game was so strong, I think this game could have been delayed for 20 years, and people would have been still on boat with it, even though it's more of an exaggeration, and quite frankly, people would not give a shit after 6+ years. So, No Man's Sky. I started off the game a little bit confused with it. I was just a little confused with a couple things here and there, but then it started panning itself out. I began to figure all of it out, and it was a moderate learning curve where it wasn't extensively impossible to be able to detect what I needed to do. It was just simply finding and acquiring materials, which required you to surf in a ship or just wander around and try to find materials throughout these worlds, or in this case the first world you enter. Essential goal with the game is you're trying to reach the center of the universe, or just simply explore and do whatever the hell you want. At first, the game opens itself up to you pretty well. I didn't hate what I was seeing with the game. It seemed, very obtuse. It had a lot going for it. Then, over time, the collecting of materials and the upgrading of the armor, it just felt null and void, like it didn't have no more purpose beyond a couple things. Now, I understand games like this are supposed to be about the journey, not the destination, but to me, it just felt like it was lacking a lot in the department of gameplay. Now, I understand the game's not supposed to be overly complicated, it's supposed to be dumbed down and very sufficient enough to be able to be played, but when I played it, I felt like when I was collecting certain things or materials, I really didn't need to. So I was mostly exploring worlds, finding materials, or not materials, but technologies and all sorts of things that I already had or stuff that was less quality than what I have. And if I wanted to get a better ship, I would have to hope that I found a random abandoned ship somewhere on a planet, or a vendor was selling one at an affordable price that was better than what I have. So it all stoots down to simply finding and mining and doing all this grinding, and most of the materials you end up collecting just stay dormant in your inventory and don't do anything. Sure, you could sell all of it, but then over time you end up finding this vicious cycle of, wait a minute, I actually do need that material, like I do need that gold, or I do need that emerald, or whatever material that you might need. Now, the game has a selection of 3 races, which I felt were kind of cool at first, but then for so many galaxies, you expect more than just the same 3 old creatures or cultures or whatever have you. And the whole story behind the game was interesting, but it doesn't quite elaborately open itself up to you other than you exploring and reading some of the lore based off of each one of the 3 cultures and trying to piece together what you can conceive of the game, which that's what I understood at least with the game when I was looking at it from my perspective. So it does a decent job at a story, or some story you can piece together if you can figure it out on your own, or be patient enough to read through all the dialogue that each one of these monoliths or ruins or relics, or it's called ruins, but ruins basically, administer. I was having fun at first, don't get me wrong. The game, I felt, is fun at first, but then when you start really opening up the game, it just feels so vast that it isn't the fact that it's overwhelming. It just feels a little bit like there should be more in that space that you're walking into. Now, I understand the developers are talking about releasing more content for the game, but after reading that they're probably going to charge for all this extra DLC to have all this extra content for a core-based game such as this, it's kind of silly. I mean, you have games already out there which are procedurally generated, such as Minecraft and Creatorverse, which is free, and all these different ones that branch off that are procedurally generated. And the answer could simply be, for most people probably going to retort to what I'm saying, is they simply just play those games then. Well, for a game such as this, you'd expect it to at least borrow some ideas from previous games out already. Now, I'm not here slapping the game across the face here, I'm simply stating the obvious. I think they should have administered more content into this game, or at least had a backup contingency plan that would add more to it. Now, to me, I like to collect things. I like to find and explore, but when I feel like I'm doing the same thing over and over in a paradox loop, it doesn't feel very fun anymore. And I felt like the randomization with most of the worlds simply just rolled back into the first role that I originally had, or some of the challenges of the quests, or the multiple choice questions or scenarios just really were repeating themselves. I'm not sure how many there are in total, but it didn't seem like there was a lot to go through. And after a while, once you figure out the answer, all you have to do is write it down on a piece of paper and just have it set aside. There's nothing too in-depth about that. Now, I understand them too trying to make it all randomly generated as it goes along, or in this case make it so it's a in-house experience where you alone are the conductor of what you explore and find, which I can dig that concept entirely. But whenever I look at the whole game, I expected to, do more of the materials I collected. I was hoping, granted they didn't quite mention this, but I was hoping for some sort of simulation based in it too, where you can build colonies or construct, you can customize your own ship with terms of, cosmetics or, simple, silly little things like that. The weapons in this game, which are the multi-tools, are pretty nifty. They're a mixture between a mining tool and a weapon to simply defend yourself against whatever harsh conditions provide. You have power-ups, you have tons of these little power-ups and technologies at your disposal, as well as enhancements to run up to and fro, or use your jetpack for extended periods of time, breathe underwater. It has all these nice features, but again, half the time I don't even feel like I need to do any of half the stuff they want me to do in this game, because most of it really feels repetitious. Like there's nothing more you need to do for it. Another problem I found, which I think everyone else has the same issue too, is space. There's not a lot of space in your inventory. You can upgrade this space by visiting space stations or, finding them along drop ships and whatever else, but honestly, that costs you money. So by the time you reach up to that 48 cap, you got nothing else left to do. There's literally so much you can do in this game before you hit that brick wall. And then you can try running in a different direction until you find another side of that brick wall, but over time you're going to simply find more brick walls. Sure, you could run around this game for 50 billion years as the estimated calculation is of how many galaxies you could possibly explore and sort through, but who would really want to sit there and do all that based off the content we have right now? Now again, they said they're going to be adding more content to the game, but the developer's lead chairman has supposedly speculation that he's saying that he was kind of feeling silly for saying that he was going to offer free content we could simply charge for it. Now that was a problem I seen, and my brain just exploded. So you provide us a core game which has, don't get me wrong, a good base, but then you tell us that we need to pay more, even though we already popped down $60 for this game via digital or physical or whatever platform you got it on. And then you tell us that, hey, if you want to do more in this universe, you must pay for it now. Which to me, it's like you have all these expendable resources, such as materials you collect and all this extra stuff you can probably throw into the game for free, but they're talking about charging you for it now. Now this is reminding me something quite familiar to Destiny, where you felt kind of cheated. Now, again, core-based game, excellent concept. Premise, execution, the idea of being able to explore so many universes and galaxies and planets and moons and all that, it just seems marvelous. But if you're going to give me a game like this and then retort to saying you're going to charge us for DLCs, that's kind of silly. I mean, unless this DLC is like really affordable, like under $10 or something, I'd be fine with it if it actually gave you your bang for your buck. And this was like bi-yearly DLCs where they're not consistent, but they're enough where they give you a huge amount of content to do. I mean, the game itself essentially is 6 gigabytes, along with some patches and some tweaks here and there that they include into the download. But again, it just feels like, to me, an underwhelming game, with a big potential to be a better game in the future, with updates, patches, or in this case, maybe and hopefully they add some more content that is, adds the depth to the game. Otherwise, it just feels like a dry experience. Now, would I say buy this game or not buy this game? I'm not here to tell you that. I'm here saying to myself personally that I feel about 60% satisfied with the game and 40% feeling bad about the game. I mean, the balance of the game being the 60% of me liking it is because I think it has a large amount of potential. I like the scenery because it does look good, even on the PS4 and even on the PC. I mean, they cut back the graphics since the announcement, or the 2014. They showed us this really gorgeous looking game and then cut back the graphics in 2016 for hardware restraints, which I can understand that, because obviously at the end of the day you want the thing to run optimal if it's going to be procedurally generated. That's why a lot of these developers who make these procedurally generated games such as Minecraft or whatever else, they try to cut back the graphics as much as possible so that way it works. Because if all this shit's trying to process at once, it's going to be a nightmare versus how Crysis 1 even runs on most computers nowadays. I mean, don't get me wrong, again, most computers can run Crysis 1 like a dream, but when all those shadows come out, boy, you aren't going to like it, nor is your computer. But I digress. No Man's Sky. I think it'd be worth it a little bit later on down the future or down the line, once more stuff is announced or introduced or put into the game. For now, it's a gamble. I feel like I was playing an open beta of a game that I had to pay for. It just felt like early access. I mean, it's a good concept. I like the ideas, at least so far, what they've thrown into it, but I wish there was just more to it. Now, again, I'm going to take my grain of salt and enjoy the game in the future, but for now, I'm just going to put it on the side until I see more for it. But anyway, take it easy. Thank you all for watching, and for those folks who played the game, tell me what you think of the game. Did you like it? Did you hate it? Did you think I'm wrong? I mean, what do you think? Anyway, take it easy.